Hello and welcome to Pointer. In this clip, we're going to discuss is z-sorting. Now, to illustrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of shapes. Let's give this a fill of green and another shape. And we'll give this a fill of red. We commit, and we notice that, okay, we have a red ellipse on top of a green circle. The circle was laid down first, the ellipse second, so what we have is the painter's algorithm where what comes first goes on the bottom, what comes second goes on the top. If I rearrange these things, that will rearrange the order. And now the circle is on the top and the ellipse is on the bottom. However, this doesn't work very well when I'm iterating. So let's try to do an iteration. Okay, let's get some points. Maximum points per row will be 1. And we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 points, okay? And my iteration, I'm going to use a PMAP. And I'm going to do pointer $x, and I'm going to use circle as my shape, and I will use a radius of 50, and the centers will be the points. So that should be labeled CXY. We do a commit. Wow, they're all black. Let's give them some color so that we can see what's going on. Fill, and let's make it red to begin with. Commit. Okay, we have some colors. Now I'm going to take these colors and I'm going to try to change them. Let's pick this one. Let's make that blue. Let's pick another fellow. Let's change that and make that yellow. Let's pick another guy. This one. Let's change that and make it green. Okay. Now, the top one is red, as you can see. That's the last thing that was laid down. The bottom one is blue. That's the first thing that was laid down. And the yellow, that's this one, is the second laid down, and the third, and so forth. If I move the third to the top, then it's the last one laid down, and it becomes here. Okay, very fine, as long as everything is in a single tibble. However, if we want to have more shapes, like circles and rectangles, we have a choice of either putting all the rectangles at the end or all the circles at the end. I will say that is, if we put a Y as a new tibble and the Y is, let's say, call it a Y, as a new tibble, and the Y is going to be rectangles. And we do a PMAP. And WH is going to be C, 50, 100. And these guys should be Actually, there should have been maximum 2 per row, so let's delete some of these guys. Maximum points per row should be 2. So, actually, let's make it 1. Rectangle, and the points will be the XY. And I'm going to make this PMAP PTR $Y or ACT and WH equals C 50 comma 50. Let's try that again. Oh, we need a comma there. Commit XY. Oh, okay, yeah. We can't have two of them. We just have 1 point. Commit. Okay. Maximum points per row should be 1. Notice all the rectangles are on top. If I move the rectangles the other way, everything goes on the bottom. Not very good if I want to alternate between rectangles and circles. So how can I fix that? Well, there are 2 approaches. The first approach is probably the simplest, and I'm going to open a project which will illustrate that approach, and it's called Z-Sorting Shapes 1. Select it. In this particular project, okay, we have shapes, and we have a PMAP, and we have a function, which is a compound. And these things can be moved around again. Moving by just, that's the Z-sort. What we're doing is we're putting everything in a single tuple. We define a shape field, and then on the basis of that shape, we decide what we're going to render. This is the only downside to this is that, okay, we're going to use 2 points for each 2 points to dictate what the bounding area for the given shape. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward and fairly easy. But what happens if I want to have a separate tibble for this, for say the circles or ellipses and the rectangles, separate tipples for the shapes? Then we can do another project, which I will illustrate, and that's sorting shapes 2. And in this particular case, what we have is we have 2 lists, ellipse and rectangle again. But instead of having a shape column, we now have an ID column, and we do 3 PMAPs. The first 2 PMAPs are PMAPs that will create a symbol. Now a symbol is an SVGR element, which basically is a promise or definition of the shape, saying that this is a definition, so we define the shapes up here, and then we actually render them down here. And we render them using the use, and then the xlink equals xlink, and then we link to the ID. So looking back up here, we have IDs, some more IDs, hopefully unique, and then the IDs down here. All right, fine. This allows us to move things around like that. Let's see if we can see it. And you can see that, okay, things are being moved around. The IDs here I've declared to be immutable so that I don't actually change them as I'm moving them around. But how do I deal with these IDs? Well, it's done with the attribute preprocessor, and it's called a display seek. What we do is when we create a new row, we create a random collection of letters of length 8, and we set that value to the ID, and we append it, and we're done. So every time I create a new row, I just add a new row. Then on change row, I get the value, I set the attribute, and I'm back. Okay, so I don't actually do anything on the change row, but I do something on the new row. What does that new row do? Well, I'm getting the display sequence, which is this guy, and I get the last row of the display sequence, and I add that value to the last row. And then I append that last row to my tib, and I set that to my display sequence. I also set the value for this tibble to this random ID. So it's doing a couple of things. It's doing that, okay, every time I create a new rectangle, for example, I'm going to add, I not only create a new ID for that rectangle, I also create a new thing in the display sequence. So let's see how that works. So I'm going to go over to rectangle, and I'm going to go to the XY. And the rectangles in this particular case are all determined by a single point. Click it. What I just got, if you look at the fill, is an E8, E8 E1AE, which is this guy. And that's the new rectangle that we got. And you'll notice that, okay, this new rectangle here has also been added to here. So it's added to the end. Now that means that it's at the top. So if I go over to the display sequence and I check this guy out and move it down a little bit, it's now at the bottom. Okay, so that's pretty much it for z-sorting of shapes. And again, what the trick is, the attribute preprocessor, and it's just on the on new row that something that all the action happens. And what it does is it not only assigns the value of this ID, but it also adds it to the display seek, and so that it can be manipulated later. And that's kind of it. Of course, in case you haven't figured it out yet, I can borrow this display seek from another project if it happens to be in another project and I want to put it in my project by doing an import and then navigating to it, click on it, and it will be copied into my project, and then I can edit it and change it however I like. So that's all I want to say for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and have a nice day and stay safe. Bye.